Tonight at WWE Hell in a Cell, the WWE Championship is on the line as the almighty WWE Champion himself, Bobby Lashley, defends the title against the challenger, once again the challenger, Drew McIntyre, inside the Hell in a Cell. But unlike their previous encounters, there is an added stipulation on this one, which certainly is skewing people in different directions when it comes to the prediction and outcome of this one. And that is that if Drew McIntyre does indeed lose this match against Bobby Lashley tonight, it is a last chance Hell in a Cell match, if you will, because if Drew McIntyre loses, he will no longer be able to challenge for the WWE Championship as long as Bobby Lashley is the WWE Champion. So there's certainly some finality, hopefully. Finally, there is some finality to this storyline between Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre. Now, when I say finally, there is some finality to this storyline, I don't mean that as a disservice. I certainly don't mean it as a disrespect to either Bobby Lashley or Drew McIntyre. I really don't. I'm a big fan of both stars. I'm a big fan of Bobby Lashley being the WWE Champion. I think in general, not in the last month or so, 6 weeks or so, basically ever since WrestleMania Backlash, but I think in general his booking as WWE Champion's been good. Drew McIntyre, and not just because he's a fellow Brit. I think after the England-Scotland game the other day, I'm not feeling too fresh towards Scotland in general, but obviously I'm a huge fan of Drew McIntyre. Was glad to see him elevated into the main event scene last year, carried Monday Night Raw through the pandemic, carried Monday Night Raw through the WWE Performance Center shows, through the Thunderdome shows, did an excellent job as WWE Champion. I say finally we get some finality to this feud because we just want to see something different. We just want to see something different at this point. Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre have been feuding since February. That's when Bobby Lashley cost Drew McIntyre the WWE Championship at Elimination Chamber. He attacked Drew McIntyre after the Elimination Chamber match. That allowed The Miz the opportunity to cash in and become WWE Champion. Then subsequently, a couple weeks later on Raw, Bobby Lashley defeats The Miz. He's been the WWE Champion ever since. But if you trace it back, the Bobby Lashley-Drew McIntyre feud has been going on since February. We're towards the end of June right now. That's like close to 5 months. It's over. WWE, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with getting a couple of pay-per-view matches out of a feud. I don't have a problem with having a feud that goes across a couple of pay-per-view events because the story evolves and all that kind of stuff. But this story hasn't evolved. The story is exactly the same from that first attack in February as it is to right now. There is no difference. And the issue is, especially when it comes to Drew McIntyre is falling victim, unfortunately. But this is the case. Drew McIntyre is falling victim to what has happened to the likes of Seth Rollins, to an extent Roman Reigns, John Cena before him, in that the fans are beginning to turn. And the fans are beginning to turn relatively quickly, actually. And that's not Drew McIntyre's fault. It would be fascinating, frankly. It would be fascinating right now. And we'll find out soon, because of course WWE is returning to touring in July. But it would be fascinating to see what kind of reaction Drew McIntyre would be getting right now. Had we been on the road, had we been performing in front of live fans for the last couple of months or so, it would have been fascinating to see what kind of reaction Drew McIntyre was getting. The reason I say it would have been fascinating is because if you judge social media, which sometimes isn't maybe the best thing to do, but if you were to judge social media, you would say the reaction to Drew McIntyre would be mixed. It would be, the typical John Cena, it's a polarizing reaction, or it's a polarizing figure. The fans, a mixed reaction, a mixed reception, is what Michael Cole used to always say about John Cena or Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns, one of the most polarizing characters in WWE history. They'd be coming up with these excuses as to why a pocket of the audience, a pocket of the fan base had started to turn on Drew McIntyre, to boo Drew McIntyre. And again, that's not Drew McIntyre's fault. I think if you look at Seth Rollins, when he was the top babyface in 2019, there certainly was an argument to be made that the fans turning on Seth Rollins, yes, he was a victim of bad creative at the time, but certainly an element of the crowd turning on him probably was his behavior at the time. People forget that about Rollins. When Rollins became Universal Champion in 2019, suddenly he became very, very outspoken on social media. He became very outspoken, attacking the likes of Will Ospreay, saying we've got our own version of Will Ospreay in WWE. It's called Ricochet, and he's doing great, and he's the US champion. Look how well that paid off for him. And talking about how much money he had in his bank account and that people outside of WWE wasn't successful. He became such a company, I don't want to say company shill, But certainly a company, oh, WWE is the best, rah, 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 I'm the champion, so I have to support WWE, and it was too much. And again, along with bad creative, the fans turned. Drew McIntyre hasn't been like that. I don't think Drew McIntyre really, his personality, his agenda, the way he talks, the way he handles himself on social media or in general, hasn't changed at all. If anything, his personality is very, very refreshing on social media, that he is honest. Sometimes he has to toe the company line, but everyone does. I think we can accept that. The reason fans have begun to sour slightly on McIntyre, and again, this isn't his fault, is a victim of bad creative. That's realistically the issue when it comes to Drew McIntyre. The issue with Drew McIntyre is that fans legitimately, and it's so obvious that WWE have had to start incorporating it into the storylines because of how ridiculous it is. People obviously, legitimately, and rightfully so, are asking questions going, wait a minute, why is Drew McIntyre getting all of these WWE Championship opportunities? It doesn't make any sense. That's the issue. And again, that's not Drew McIntyre's fault. That's bad creative. It's creative's fault. Creative's issue there is that it doesn't make any sense as to why Drew McIntyre should still be continuously challenging for the WWE Championship. There is no reason. There is no rationale. Drew McIntyre lost the WWE Championship, again, at Elimination Chamber. He lost it to The Miz. He lost it because of Bobby Lashley. Fine. You have the match at WrestleMania, which a lot of people, myself included, thought Drew McIntyre was going to win. I thought that whole thing was set up to give Drew McIntyre the moment he didn't get last year at WrestleMania 36. I thought, given there's going to be somewhat of a crowd there, a stadium... The reason they've dropped the WWE Championship in the first place, he did, is just essentially to get that big moment. And to be honest, I genuinely believe that was probably the plan for a while. What they didn't expect is for Bobby Lashley to get over and the presentation of Bobby Lashley to be so great. I don't think WWE intended for that at all. And so because of that, and because of them maybe justifying it as, well, once we get to a bigger crowd, we can maybe give McIntyre his moment, or Bobby Lashley's too hot at the moment, it doesn't make any sense. How can you call Bobby Lashley the almighty WWE Champion and then lose the WWE Championship on his first defense? There was lots of, again, logical things that made sense of why it made total sense for Lashley to retain. So that's fine. So he loses at WrestleMania. And frankly, there wasn't a lot of bells and whistles involved. Yes, Drew McIntyre was setting up for the Claymore. And yes, MVP, I mean, he kind of got involved. He hardly grabbed McIntyre's foot. He just sort of distracted him a little bit. But I didn't actively play into the finish. The finish of that match at WrestleMania was that Drew McIntyre passed out. He passed out to the Hurt Lock by Bobby Lashley. That was it. Now, Michael Cole did his best on commentary that night and was obviously scripted by Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, etc. Whoever was producing Michael Cole in his ear was actively telling him, you know, Drew McIntyre, he didn't get pinned, he didn't tap out, he passed out, he didn't submit on his own volition, he didn't get pinned to the canvas, all that kind of stuff. So they were actively trying to protect him, but he lost in the same vein that if you're watching a UFC fight, someone locks in a guillotine choke but they don't tap out, they just pass out, they still lost, and they still lost fair and square at the end of the day. Again, there was maybe slight interference by MVP, but in the grand scheme of things, not a lot. Bobby Lashley won that match clean, as clean as probably a heel can do in the opening match of WrestleMania for the WWE Championship. So he won that match. Now, they then do a situation where it's the triple threat match of WrestleMania Backlash, which, again, looking back on it now that Braun Strowman is no longer with WWE, just feels crazy, realistically, doesn't it? But they did the match at WrestleMania Backlash, and again, how did we get to that match? Initially, Drew McIntyre wins a number one contenders match. Again, why was he put into that number one contenders match? There was no reason. They tried to justify it as, well, again, they were trying to play it up like, well, he kind of got screwed over at WrestleMania, but he didn't. He didn't get screwed over at WrestleMania. That's just a fact of it. He didn't get screwed over at WrestleMania. To say that he did, he didn't. But he wins the number one contenders match against Braun Strowman and Randy Orton. Eventually, Braun Strowman gets added in, but Bobby Lashley wins that match. Granted, he doesn't pin Drew McIntyre again because the plan was to do Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre. But once again, when they're trying to come up with the new number one contender on Raw, who's involved in that match? Drew McIntyre once again. Because I earned it because I had another number one contenders match. And this was against Kofi Kingston. And again, the writers on Raw, which says a lot, the writers know that this is stupid and there's a plot hole here. The writers had to put it into Kofi Kingston's promo on Monday Night Raw. They had to constantly say, you know, Drew, why are you constantly getting WWE Championship opportunities? You've lost twice in a row. You lost the WWE Championship in February to The Miz. You then lost to Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania. You were part of that triple threat match at WrestleMania Backlash and you lost. So So where's the issue there? Why are you constantly getting these WWE Championship opportunities? Why are you even getting opportunities to earn a WWE Championship opportunity? And in reality, the reason why Drew McIntyre is getting these opportunities is because there's nobody else. And again, this doesn't reflect well on McIntyre. This doesn't help McIntyre, because if the writers who are actively writing the show, if the writers, the ones who are penning the scripts and they're writing these storylines and they're pitching these storylines, if they realize there is a plot hole here, if they realize that this doesn't make sense, what must the fans be thinking on social media? And that's the problem here. The fans actively are looking at this on social media going, I don't like this. I don't like this, because we've seen, and this goes back 15, 20 years at this point. It really goes back that long. It goes back to the rise of John Cena in WWE. Fans don't like being told, especially this modern day fan, whatever you want to call him or her, this modern day fan, they don't want to be told who to like. They don't like to be told, you have to like this person. You have to like this person. Isn't this person great? Championship opportunity, championship opportunity, championship opportunity. Oh, isn't this person great? Oh, they should have another title opportunity. It was laughable sometimes with John Cena back in the day. He would lose the WWE Championship, say at a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. The following Monday night on Raw, he'd come out smiling. And you go, why on earth are you smiling? You just lost the biggest prize in WWE. And the reason he was smiling is because he knew, I'm going to get another title shot. It doesn't matter. And that kind of stuff really annoys the fan. It certainly annoys me when I watch it. And you're watching this show and you say to yourself, look, I like Drew McIntyre, but why is he getting another opportunity? That doesn't seem fair. And the audience, again, they don't like being told who to like, and they don't like a sense of injustice. They really don't. They don't, and it doesn't matter if you're a heel or a babyface. They don't like to look at a talent and go, that's not right. That doesn't seem fair. And again, that's not Drew McIntyre's fault. That's not Drew McIntyre's fault. That's the fault of the writers, and I guess ultimately the likes of Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, and all of those executive backstage in WWE and those higher-ups in WWE, because it comes across like they haven't created a star that's able to step into this WWE Championship picture with Bobby Lashley. They haven't created that. The reason they're having to continuously go to the well with Drew McIntyre is because they've got no one else. I really, genuinely wouldn't have had a problem if, say, you had Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre at Hell in a Cell, WrestleMania rather, and you say, look, ultimately we want to get to a point where either at Hell in a Cell or maybe SummerSlam or Money in the Bank, we want to do Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre again. And you go, okay, if you actually plan these things out, which of course they don't, but if you plan this thing out, you say, okay, between now and WrestleMania and Hell in a Cell, we've got to keep McIntyre out of that WWE Championship picture. We've got to give the storyline that he's legitimately earning that opportunity again. And I don't mean earning it in terms of put him straight into a number one contenders match, because how has he earned the right to be in that number one contenders match? He hasn't. Just being a former champion doesn't earn you the right to have anything. They should say, look, you lost back of the line. Then he has a feud with Jinder Mahal, The Miz, John Morrison, a mid-card heel on Monday Night Raw, beats them convincingly, has a couple of pay-per-view matches against them, and then once he steps up to face Bobby Lashley at Hell in a Cell, at Money in the Bank, maybe at SummerSlam, the match feels relatively fresh because you haven't done it since WrestleMania, and it feels like a big deal. The problem is with this one, it feels like we've seen it. We saw it at Hell in a Cell, we saw it partially at WrestleMania Backlash, and I think the fans just feel tired of it, and the outcome, I suppose, tonight is the one that's difficult to predict here, because obviously the stipulation is that Drew McIntyre isn't going to get another WWE Championship opportunity whilst Bobby Lashley is WWE Champion. So given WWE logic, and given someone that's watched WWE for like 20 years at this point, logic would suggest that usually when WWE backs themselves into a corner like that, they don't like to commit to anything. They really don't. They don't like to commit to that kind of stuff. They like to have in their back pocket that, realistically, if they wanted to, they could do Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre again at Money in the Bank. And that's probably going to be actively something in their minds right now. So logic would suggest, they don't like to hold those kind of stipulations over people. They really don't. So you could see a situation tonight where Drew McIntyre wins the WWE Championship and then they run the match back again at Money in the Bank, right? Because the first 3 times wasn't good enough. We need to do it again because this time McIntyre's the champion and we get the rematch. That's what WWE genuinely could do. they would stretch it out even longer. They would say, okay, we can stretch it out even longer before SummerSlam because they don't want to start something new a month before the biggest show of the year. So they could do something like that. My gut says to me, even though the stipulation is that McIntyre, if he loses, he doesn't get another WWE Championship opportunity against Lashley while he's champion. My gut says I still think Lashley retains. There's a couple of reasons as to why, again, even though the spidey senses are tingling and saying, well, you know what WWE's like when it comes to holding stipulations over people in terms of never challenging for the title again, all that kind of stuff. My gut says to me, there is still more to this Lashley reign. I still think there's way more legs in this Lashley reign. The reason why is because he's never faced anyone else outside of it. It's all been around Drew McIntyre. So there is absolutely legs in it because he can face other people. Now, who would those people be? Certainly Raw doesn't have hardly any talent right now. Logic would suggest maybe Brock Lesnar. I know we've had those stories come out today saying that Brock Lesnar has spoken to WWE about returning. I don't know if that's for a Bobby Lashley feud. I don't know if that's for a feud against Drew McIntyre. Time will only tell. But logic says to me there's more they can get out of this Lashley reign. Another thing says that why I think that Lashley probably will retain, again, we spoke about it when we did the Bayley preview video earlier today, is that McIntyre stood tall Monday Night on Raw. McIntyre stood very, very tall. He pinned Bobby Lashley. Lashley's been pinned by Kofi Kingston as well in the build-up to this, which I hate, by the way. How is he the almighty WWE Champion when he's lost twice in the build-up to this? I think it's nonsensical, frankly. Bobby Lashley shouldn't be doing jobs for anyone, even Drew McIntyre on Monday Night Raw. The way you got Bobby Lashley over is you booked him like Brock Lesnar. That's how you get talent over nowadays. It has to be that strong. Again, the modern fan is so, the attention span is so small, you have to really capture their attention by booking them strong, really strong. And that's what Bobby Lashley should have. So, wasn't a fan of that. But the fact that Drew McIntyre won on Raw, the fact that Drew McIntyre got the upper hand on Bobby Lashley on Monday says to me again, they do this when they're trying to protect someone ahead of time. And I think that's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to protect Drew McIntyre ahead of this loss tonight. Now, will there be shenanigans involved tonight? I really wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. I really wouldn't be surprised. I know we've heard rumors about the likes of The Fiend. I don't know how I see The Fiend getting involved in this one, considering that Alexa Bliss is performing on the same show. I would think that if The Fiend is going to return, he would return during the whole Alexa Bliss, Shayna Baszler thing. I suppose it doesn't rule out him possibly getting involved in this main event, right? Maybe a situation whereby Lashley retains because The Fiend gets involved, and then Drew McIntyre versus Bray Wyatt's the feud heading into SummerSlam, and then Bobby Lashley can spin off and maybe feud with Brock Lesnar. That's money. I think that's money, and I think that's a compelling storyline for both men. Again, I haven't been a fan of the way Bobby Lashley's been booked over the course of the last 6 weeks or so. I'm really not a fan of the whole the almighty, for lack of a better term, the almighty Godfather is what he's been doing. He's been ripping off Charles White's gimmick at this point because, what's he been doing over the course of the last few weeks? Partying with a gaggle of females backstage? I don't care for that presentation. I like the presentation of Bobby Lashley, and you can say, look, he's living his best life and he adds a bit of personality. I don't know if we need all that kind of personality. In the same vein, I bring it back to Brock Lesnar. The reason people want to see the Brock Lesnar Bobby Lashley match so badly is because they're kind of parallels to each other. They're big guys, MMA background, legitimate badasses. You wouldn't see Brock Lesnar backstage with a load of females around him and having Paul Heyman bring in, going, oh, look at the champion, look at the beast, look at this, all that kind of stuff. You wouldn't have that. You would have Brock Lesnar. The presentation of Brock Lesnar is a presentation that works for Bobby Lashley. He comes out, he beats people, he dominates people, he talks trash, he backs it up. MVP talks trash, Bobby Lashley backs it up. That's what he needs to do. And I haven't been a fan of that presentation of Lashley. I haven't been a fan of him, again, being involved with all the women and then doing jobs to Kofi Kingston and doing jobs to Drew McIntyre. We don't need that presentation of Bobby Lashley. We need to get back to what got him over in the first place. Bobby Lashley became WWE Champion because he didn't do any jobs. He just did not do any jobs for like 6 months on Raw. If he was involved in the match, involved the Hurt Business, he got the winning fall, he got the submission, he won. Even when he dropped the United States Championship, that was so he would win the WWE Championship, and he wasn't involved in the finish of that one as well. Again, all of it was to get Lashley over, and it feels like over the course of the last 6 weeks or so, we've seen some steps back, which concerns me because, again, then you would think that maybe is WWE souring a bit on Lashley. But if anything, if you're going to compare either two men in this one who have WWE soured on the most, you would argue it's Drew McIntyre. So, again, I'm going to go with Lashley to win this one. I wouldn't be super surprised if Drew McIntyre won, but I just don't see the point in that. Again, I think there's way more mileage to get out of Lashley as WWE Champion. Time will only tell if WWE decides to go in that direction, though. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on tonight's WWE Championship Last Chance Hell in a Cell match between Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.